Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime.
Hayden, what do you know about the Madeleine McCann case?
I think that Crime Junkie covered the Madeleine McCann case. I think that is where I first heard it. Was it thought that she ran away, but she's a missing person?
No, it was not thought that she ran away.
But she's a missing person.
Yes.
And she was a college student?
She was 3.
Okay. So I have no idea what that case, I don't know. I am nowhere near is there another person who has a similar name? Like an MM?
Maura Murray?
Maura Murray. That's who I'm thinking about. Gosh, Madeleine McCann. The name sounds familiar, but I don't know if I'm familiar with the case.
So Madeleine McCann was 3 years old. She was...
Do you want to ask a different question?
No, that's my question. That's the question.
Sorry, I didn't have the background knowledge necessary to faithfully say, yes, of course.
That's all right. I'm going off the dome because I did not research the Madeleine McCann case. I've seen the documentary. I've read stuff about it. I know that there were semi-recent developments in the case. I know that there's a girl in the Midwest who is claiming to be Madeleine McCann.
Maybe that's why I've heard of it. Was that disproven?
I don't know.
Do you know anything about Madeleine McCann?
Yes, her family was on vacation. They're English, and they were on vacation in Portugal.
A British case.
Oh
Got it.
God.
Okay. Well, all right. You're welcome, Britain.
Why do you hate?
I don't. No, I don't hate the UK. You loving it
I know. I don't understand
makes
it.
me want to like it less.
I don't understand that.
It's so hard to explain because we obviously like a lot of the same shit.
It would be like me hating cups because you love cups so much.
But you don't.
I know.
I know, but it's not the same. It's not equivocal. I don't know how to explain it because we both love Drag Race. We both really like true crime. We both like dogs.
Now.
That's true. I used to hate dogs. And that had nothing to do with you.
Uh-huh. I don't know that you're going to be able to explain it. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. My mom used to also be in love with anything international travel to Europe. Well, I say that. I don't think she ever went to like the Baltic states or Russia or the Ukraine. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my hang up is about England. I hate that they still have an active monarchy, although they do not make any kind of like governmental decisions.
Yeah.
Even the fact that the Queen was head of state, I feel like there was an opportunity when she died that they could have just ended the whole royal family thing. I mean, they can live, they can continue to exist, but I don't understand. I don't know.
I don't even know.
What is it? There's like 157 Independence Days celebrating independence from Britain.
Yeah, and look where that has gotten us.
Freedom of religion.
You don't have that over there?
You didn't when we were liberated.
Do you? Because didn't Texas just pass something where you can teach the Bible in schools?
It is going to be financially incentivized for English courses, kinder through 5th grade, to teach Bible lessons. And I think the first one is like in kinder, and it's the Golden Rule, and it's attached to some biblical lesson.
Tell me more about freedom of religion.
I'm not saying that's what's true today.
But I'm talking about today.
Well, whatever. They were forced to make changes. They didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart.
They learned from their mistakes.
Maybe.
We've all been there.
Maybe.
Maybe?
I don't know. I don't know what my deal... Sorry, British listeners. I don't know if there's any of you out there. I'm grappling with what this all means to me.
So the McCanns were British. Mm-hmm. And they went on vacation in Portugal.
Cool. I heard Portugal's very nice and queer friendly. Have you been to Portugal?
No.
Okay.
They were there with a few other families, and in the evenings they would put the kids to bed, and then there was a little, I think, patio restaurant bar area that was, I guess, kind of across some sort of courtyard, or they could see their apartments that they had rented from the restaurant. And after they would put the kids down, they would go over to this restaurant, and I think they would have drinks, and the word tapas, they would have tapas, which anytime I hear that
What
word,
the fuck are tapas?
it's small plates. It's kind of like appetizers, I guess.
Okay.
But anytime I hear the word tapas, I think of Madeleine McCann, because I'm like, why the fuck does it matter that they went and had small plates? Like, but I think the restaurant just did, I guess, kind of,
Was it a tapas restaurant?
I guess. All I know is that
Also, is tapas the plural form? Is there just a tapa?
I don't know, but on May 3rd, 2007, somebody went into the apartment that she was sleeping in. She was not the only child sleeping in there, but somebody went in because they had sliding glass doors and they were leaving them open because all of the parents would go in and out. But
they didn't live there.
No, they were in Portugal on holiday.
How long is a holiday?
I don't know. In that part of the world, they go on trips out of the country pretty regularly for longer periods of time because they actually believe in time off.
Work-life balance, actual benefits to their working class. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You referred to it as an apartment. And so I guess I'm trying to understand, is it kind of like an Airbnb situation before Airbnb?
Maybe more like a condominium.
Okay.
I want to say that there were reports afterwards of a man leaving that area.
Madeleine McCann was sleeping in her bed. Other children were sleeping in their beds as well. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, some guy came in, took her, and left. And they haven't found her. Or if they did find her, they found her body like recently. And this was in 2007.
This case isn't about Madeleine McCann.
Nope.
Oh.
I was just asking to see what you knew about Madeleine McCann.
Okay.
Let me see. Update 2024.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. The AI overview on Google about Madeleine McCann says that she has not been found. She went missing from her bed in a Portuguese holiday apartment on May 3rd, 2007, when she was 3 years old. And her case has been described as the most widely reported missing person case in modern history.
Oh.
And in 2020, the investigation shifted to a German man who was named a formal suspect by Portuguese police last year.
Last year?
That's why I said that there were recent updates.
Yeah.
And German prosecutors believe that Madeleine is dead.
Madeleine McCann, who this episode is not about.
Right.
I have enough backstory.
The most widely reported missing persons case in modern history.
Then why do I not know it well?
I'm not going to lie. I think that you and I both consume quite a bit of true crime. And there have been a lot of times, surprisingly, considering we've only put out 20-something episodes at this point. I can't remember what you told me last weekend. Actually, last weekend is the one that I have the best hold on. Normally, once you're gone, I'm like, I don't know what he told me about. But last weekend, you told me about the kid who had his parents with his girlfriend. And
I mean, this will come out after that, so it's okay if you say the name. I can't remember.
Oh, you want me to... Whamsley. I don't remember the name.
Oh, yes. Okay. See, I couldn't even remember what I told you last week. So who is this case actually about?
On September 9th, 1998, Karen Matthews gave birth to her daughter, Shannon.
Okay.
Shannon was her fifth child. Overall, Karen had 7 children with 5 men. And basically, in just about every source that I looked at, there was a whole lot of shade being thrown at Karen Matthews.
She was being slut-shamed.
Yes. I just think she likes variety.
Were they all different ethnicities?
I don't know. They were just different people.
Was it like that little Kim song?
How many licks?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
What does she say? Oh, hell yeah, I even fuck with different races?
Yes.
But we don't know if that was...
Dressed in all black with a gat in the lap. It's a good song.
It's a great song.
Yeah. We played it. Marilyn and I. Hey, birds. Marilyn and I, we were driving around one time with our old roommate, David, and one of her old coworkers, Julian. And we played that song, and you know that part where it's just like a bunch of moaning, and both of them who had never heard the song before, they were like, what are we listening to? Porn?
Aqua Green, Vaseline.
Yes. It's such a good song. I love that song.
What other rhymes are in there that are just
Don't listen to it with your kids
wild?
around, but it's really good.
You know what? She talks about everything.
She talks about everything.
Yeah. Criminally underrated.
Yeah, back to Karen Matthews being slut-shamed. According to a neighbor in Dewsbury Moor, located in West Yorkshire.
Does the actual case take place in the UK?
Mm-hmm. Dewsbury Moor.
Okay.
West Yorkshire. This neighbor was close to Karen, and she said that Karen had been on her own since about the age of 18. 18? It literally says 15.
Well, dyslexia.
I don't even know where 18 came from because the actual words that I read were since the age of 15 or 16. And I dropped the 16 and said around the age of 15. So why 18 came out of my mouth, I'll never know. But her life had been difficult, okay?
Okay.
As you can imagine, on her own since 15 or 16, but definitely before 18.
Anyone who has 7 kids has a rough life.
Well, and I think part of the reason that the two of them were close, despite the fact that they lived 2 doors down from one another, is because Karen had 7 children and Natalie Murray had 6.
You could have your own school for just your kids.
You have one in every grade.
Yeah, that's wild.
Okay, here's a millennial quiz for you. Like the scar on Albus Dumbledore's left knee, Shannon Matthews' family tree was said to resemble what?
What are we doing right now? A fucking stick? A straight line?
No, a map of the London Underground.
Okay.
It is described as veering off in complicated directions. Being a big fan of the tubes myself, I wanted to see this family map, if you will. But A, it was a mess. And B, I think they were trying to force families together that didn't really go together. So, like, you have a stepdad. Mm-hmm. Does he have siblings?
He has a dead sister.
Do you consider her your aunt?
No.
Okay. Because that's kind of what they do. In this family tree that they put together, they include Karen and her boyfriend, her partner, and the father of her youngest child. They weren't married. Mm-hmm. But when they put Shannon Matthews' family tree together, they included Craig Meehan's aunts and uncles. Okay, I'm not the only one that is confusing for.
That's okay. I kind of understand its purpose, sure, but I would think that map would need to be centered around that child, not around...
Right. But I guess because Karen has a child...
That's not applicable to her other 6 kids.
Well, I guess because Karen has a child with Craig Meehan, then I guess kind of.
But that would be just for
the
kid,
one child that shares
not for the other 6,
right.
Which is what would be insinuated by saying it's for her, right? Like if it's connected to her, it would be connected to the other 6.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I think part of the reason that it's so confusing to me is Karen doesn't really strike me as somebody who hangs on to the same partner for long periods of time.
She's a free spirit.
Right. Long-term monogamy might not be for her. So anyway, the family tree that I saw included Craig's 9 aunts and uncles. So for the sake of reporting what I found, I'll include that information.
Me and Craig have a lot in common.
Same. I have 9. You only have 8.
That's true.
On that one side. Anyway, all of that feels about as messy as me trying to understand the family tree, and it's not 100% pertinent information, so I digress. As I mentioned, Karen and Craig are partners as of 2008. They share a child together. Craig's a proud new papa at the youthful age of 22, only 10 years Karen's junior.
Okay.
The couple have been together for 4 years.
Since he was 18.
Which, since I know doing math isn't really at the top of your list, means that they got together when he was 18.
Sometimes I can.
No, yeah.
Was she grooming him?
Oh.
Or did she just find him at 18?
There was nothing to insinuate that they had been together before he was 18.
Okay.
So it's early in 2008, February, and Karen and Craig are living in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, like I mentioned. Dewsbury Moor, to be exact, which is a district within Dewsbury. And 4 of Karen's children, including Shannon, live with the couple. Shannon has a brother that she shares both parents with, who is older than her, and who lives with their father, Leon Rose, in Huddersfield, which is only about 10 miles from where Shannon is living with her mom and Craig. Of the 3 children not living with Karen, the others were one of her sons, one of her daughters, but that is the extent of what I was able to find about where those kids were located.
Okay.
So February 19th, Shannon had a swimming lesson she attended at Dewsbury Sports Center before returning to her school, Westmore Junior School. The school was only half a mile from her home, so Shannon typically walked the distance. At 3:10 p.m., she was en route to her house on this icy day. And when 6:45 came and went without any sign of Shannon, Karen phoned the police and they took immediate action.
Okay. So 3 hours and 35 minutes between
when she was last seen and when Mom decided to call the police.
And what was the distance?
Half a mile.
And how old was she?
9.
Okay. I mean, 9-year-olds can get distracted.
Yeah.
And if it's icy, I don't know. I've never been in a position really where things were so icy that it could be a danger. But okay. Is there a reason she didn't maybe reach out earlier? Like, did Shannon have like an after school program she would go to sometimes? Or was there a friend or a reason she wasn't calling sooner than 6:45?
She just had that swimming lesson and then she was heading home. I don't know. Maybe when you have 7 kids, you forget to count them as frequently as you should.
I know, but only 4 lived with her.
Oh, that's true.
With her and her mom and her husband, Craig Meehan. Yeah, so between the 3 adults and the 3 older siblings that were also there?
Well, if one of the kids was Craig's, that would have been her youngest child. So there were 2 kids who were younger than Shannon, but I'm fairly certain that the child that Karen and Craig shared would be living in the home with Karen and Craig. I could be wrong because I don't know about the other 2 children who were Karen's but didn't live with Karen.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. She was really only one of 4 that she had to keep up with. So you would probably notice, I don't know, maybe Natalie's kids were over in and out and...
That's very true.
And maybe Natalie had a child who was the same age as Shannon, and so she would stop in and hang out there. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't call sooner. They didn't call until actually 6:48.
Neither here nor there.
Right. It is believed that part of the reason the police, of which more than 200 were part of the search for Shannon, were so quick to take action is because of the recent disappearance of Madeleine McCann, another young British girl who was abducted from an apartment her family rented on holiday in Portugal.
Did Madeleine McCann's family live nearby?
I'm going to say no, because the McCanns lived in Leicestershire and the Matthews were in West Yorkshire.
I need to brush up on my UK geography.
So with England still reeling with this major missing child's case, and now they have another one on their hands, they are bound and determined to make sure that this case gets solved. The police, like I said, headed out in droves to get the search underway. They spoke to more than 1,500 motorists, went to twice as many homes in Dewsbury, and spoke with more than double that many people during the search for Shannon.
So how many people were spoken to?
Over 6,000.
Wow. About Shannon? Mm-hmm. Okay.
They were imploring anyone who had seen anything.
How big was Dewsbury? Dewsbury?
Dewsbury. I actually don't know that.
Okay.
They were imploring anyone who had seen anything to say something, but as I mentioned before, the last confirmed sighting of Shannon was just a little after 3 p.m. that day.
And who was the last person that saw her?
I assume that it was somebody at the school, whether it was other people who had come from the swimming lesson with her or one of the staff members at the school seeing the kids off.
That's where like investigations start, right? We figure out who the last person is, and then we work backwards from there.
Right. Which is why I don't think that it was somebody that would have been suspicious, like another classmate.
Right.
Because it never stated.
Well, and even then she was only 9.
Right.
Oh, God. Okay.
So she went missing on February 19th. Thank you. This is great. We're doing great. On Saturday, March 1st.
Okay.
The day before Mother's Day. Karen gave an emotional statement about how she didn't want any cards or gifts. She simply wanted her daughter home for Mother's Day.
Was it believed that Karen was a good mother? Like, I know we have this element of slut shaming, but had any of those other children been removed from her care?
I don't know that, because that would be weird, right? If 2 or 3 of them had been removed from her care, but then 4 were still left in her care.
It brings up a lot of interesting questions, and it helps me, well, it confuses me to an extent, because I think, was Karen or her Craig, are either of them responsible for this? Did they want one less mouth to feed, one less child to care for?
I don't know that there was any suspicion that was thrown on Karen. There was some suspicion thrown on Craig, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
But I want to really convey to you the magnitude of this search.
Okay.
Because by March 5th, More than 250 officers were on the case. More than 60 detectives were on the case. More than 10% of West Yorkshire's law enforcement was participating in the search and investigation into Shannon's disappearance.
Wow. Talk about calling in the cavalry.
16 of the UK's 27 recovery dogs were working to find her as well.
That's ginormous.
This was the largest investigation in Yorkshire history since the hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper, who was active from 1975 to 1980. And just because the investigation was so big, I'm going to throw in who was at the reins. It was headed by Detective Superintendent Andy Brennan.
Okay.
That doesn't come back up again.
What is their equivalent of the FBI? Scotland Yard?
We'll go with that.
Because the FBI gets involved in missing cases sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. There was no mention of Scotland Yard getting involved in this.
Okay.
While the police force was hard at work and using every ounce of manpower they could afford.
We really have to figure out who the FBI is for the UK. We have to figure out what their equivalency is at some point.
But not right now.
No. Okay.
They've
got everybody in the UK looking for Shannon.
Mm-hmm. But while the police force had a vested interest in this, the media were not as interested in picking up Shannon Matthews' story as they had been for Madeleine McCann, which caused scrutiny to come upon them for perceived disparity of the coverage being linked to socioeconomic status. Mm-hmm. Because the McCanns were able to live a comfortable middle-class life, being that they were both doctors, and Karen and Craig were not as financially fortunate. It was especially disconcerting because Madeleine had been kidnapped in Portugal, but Shannon had been kidnapped on her walk home from school. So if publicity could help spread the news about it and provide the public with information that could help locate her, the media was really dropping the ball.
Yeah. It sounds like this little girl is paying the price for her economic class.
Mm-hmm. So actually, it was said outright in The Independent that Karen was, quote, not as elegant nor as eloquent, unquote, as Kate McCann, because the two women were being contrasted constantly because of their seeming differences, despite having the commonality of a missing daughter.
Which, what else do you need to know I should promote this in the media? There is a missing child.
Right.
Why does it matter if Karen is as eloquent or elegant or as well-spoken or as financially well off as the McCann family?
Right, but despite the investigation into Shannon's disappearance being massive, it was found to be less newsworthy than even the tiniest development in the Madeleine McCann case.
Oh, God.
All of that aside, the Sun newspaper did offer a reward for any information that would lead to Shannon being found safe. Initially, they offered £20,000, and then they bumped it up to £50,000.
Wow.
By March 7th, Karen's parents have indicated that Craig has been violent towards Shannon previously. And that's when speculation began to grow into suspicion that Craig may have done something to cause her harm, which I guess could explain the delay in the 310 to 648.
Yeah.
Both of Shannon's parents, Karen and Leon, spoke in defense of Craig.
Okay.
Neither believed that he was responsible for causing Shannon's disappearance.
But he was physically aggressive with Karen.
With Shannon, according to Karen's parents.
So he had been physically aggressive to Shannon the child?
Yes. Karen's parents said that he had been violent with Shannon.
Oh.
Is that not what I said?
I don't know, but I
It's a lot of
understood
names.
that he was maybe being domestically violent with Karen.
Shannon is who Karen's parents alleged that Craig was violent towards.
Wow. That makes him a suspect to me.
Mm-hmm. So really, if she had made it home and then disappeared, I suppose that would lend more credence to the idea. But the way that the investigation is being conducted is that she disappeared on the walk. Because I guess what I'm thinking is that if Craig would have been violent, although we don't know to what extent he allegedly was violent, he may have accidentally killed her, which I think is what is being suggested by mentioning his violence towards her. Mm-hmm. But then he would have had to carry a lot of malice for her specifically to seek her out on her walk home and fatally harm her.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of just mentioned this. if I were a 9-year-old being abused at home, I could probably find a way to keep myself distracted out on a half-mile walk too.
Yeah, that's true.
So Karen and Leon both spoke in defense of Craig.
Yes.
Did they admit that he was violent?
No.
Okay.
Karen and Craig actually gave an interview to a local radio station 5 days after this, on March 12th, where they were asked about the allegations of his history of violence towards Shannon. They also wanted to talk about the fact that Karen had 7 children with 5 men. So the radio program actually took some heat for the way they handled this interview, since they were asking unnecessary and even cruel questions of the couple who were just trying to find their missing child.
I don't know. I don't feel like the questions are cruel to ask if he was violent with Shannon.
Right.
Now, bringing up Karen's...
I think that's what it was talking
Right.
about more so than anything. But then even at that, when the source that I was reading mentioned that, they never talked about how they responded to that question about violence. So I think it's fairly safe to assume that they just denied it. But again, these types of questions would not have even crossed their minds if the McCanns had been sitting in their position.
Right.
Yet another instance of the juxtaposition of how the two couples were treated throughout the disappearances of their respective daughters. Leon Rose, Karen Matthews, and Craig Meehan stood together during a community event to bring more attention to the case of their missing daughter and the subsequent search for her, which is another instance of how they all banded together despite insensitive and sensationalist questions and reporting about their lives that did not help the case in any way. Karen pleaded that her, quote, beautiful princess daughter, unquote, be brought back to her. Just like Leon, Karen, and Craig, the community banded together to search for Shannon until the police said, leave it to us, at which point they created a Search for Shannon campaign. This campaign was described as efficient and effective because the residents of this area took action as if Shannon were their own child, probably because if there was a predator lurking in the area snatching up children on their walks home from school, it very well could have been their child, or worse, more children could go missing, including the possibility of it being their child. As you can probably imagine, the area that Karen and Craig lived in wasn't one of affluence, but the members of this community were offering up whatever money they could spare to help. Julie Bushby, it seems, may have headed the community's efforts. And they were printing, posting, and passing out flyers. They had shirts made to spread awareness, and they were keeping their ears and eyes trained on anything that might give them a tip to share with the police. Julie also became someone who provided Karen with support during this time. And Natalie, the neighbor from 2 doors down who had the 6 children, was also there to support Karen, popping in periodically to check on her and to help her make sense of the situation. 24 days after Shannon disappeared, the search for her concluded.
She was found?
On March 17th at 12:30, Shannon was found, safe, hidden under a divan bed. A divan? I had to look up how to say it.
Divan?
And I had it in here, divan. But I still fucked it up.
A divan bed?
Yes. Do you know what that is?
No.
So think of like your bed.
Uh-huh.
And like there are hinges under the mattress near the headboard. So you can lift the base of the bed and you can store things underneath it.
Okay. She was hidden in there?
Yeah.
In her own home?
No, in a flat rented by 39-year-old Michael Donovan after the police received a tip to search the unit.
Oh.
Remember the baseball roster of aunts and uncles of Craig Meehan's mentioned in Shannon's convoluted family tree? Mm-hmm. Michael Donovan was one of those uncles.
Okay.
After discovering Shannon in the base of the bed, it was determined that she had also been drugged, was traumatized, but like I said, otherwise safe.
Drugged and traumatized. Was she sexually assaulted?
There has never been any insinuation or anything that has said that she was sexually assaulted.
So why did this fucking freak take her and steal her and drug her and hide her in his bed?
That's a great question.
Do people kidnap and take people without sexually assaulting them?
Yes. I mean, has it happened in the history of humanity? Yes.
He's going to be like, name one. Name one. I can't think of one. I mean, I can think of like dramatizations, movies like Taken or shit like that, where someone is taken and ransomed back, and they're not sexually assaulted. They're just kidnapped for money. But in this instance, there's nothing that...
Sometimes children in particular are taken because of the need to have a child, or sometimes children are taken to be raised by somebody else.
That's true. Okay. I can give you that. It just seems very odd to me.
Might be awkward at the family reunion, though, if that were his motive.
Yeah, I can't.
To show up with their kid and be like, this is my daughter.
It doesn't make sense to me.
So while in the care of Kirkley's Family Services, and it explicitly stated that Shannon was there voluntarily, she was questioned by officers trained specially to handle cases involving children.
She was at her would-be great uncle's home voluntarily?
No. At Kirkley's Family Services.
Okay. I'm sorry. What is that? Is that like CPS?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
She was questioned by officers trained specially to handle cases involving children, and these sessions were done in 10-minute intervals. They were trying to figure out what happened.
Right.
Fortunately, it was reported that Shannon had begun to heal from this ordeal, although she did suffer from nightmares and require psychotherapy in the time following her captivity.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Michael Donovan resisted arrest initially, but was taken into custody, and it would be another 10 days before Karen would get to see Shannon face to face. In the days following this meeting, on April 6th or 8th, depending on the source you're looking at, Karen was arrested and charged with obstructing justice and child neglect. Around the same time of Karen's arrest, Michael made an unsuccessful attempt to commit suicide. It turns out that this had all just been a scheme concocted by Karen, maybe Craig, and obviously at some point Michael, Craig's uncle, who was brought in on it. But their idea was that Shannon would go missing and then there would be reward money offered up. So after a period of time, or maybe when the reward was to their liking, Michael Donovan would miraculously be able to offer a tip that led to the safe return of Shannon and collect the money, and then the group would share it.
Oh my God. So none of them gave a fuck about Shannon?
No. Well, maybe, but...
No.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like him being violent with her was the least of their fucking issues.
Craig?
Yeah.
So I talk about this a little bit later in here, but I wonder if there was some truth to the accusations that he was violent with her. I wonder if there was truth to the accusations that he was violent with her, because there is never anything that ever confirms that he was. But if he was, maybe part of what got Karen to this point to hatch this idea was also to remove Shannon from that situation. There is more to it. None of it really makes sense, but there is more to the whole thing.
Okay.
And a lot of it is conjecture. The idea overall feels pretty half-baked to me, but it might have been a very well thought out crime, and I just missed out on the finer details by not being invited in on the plan. I don't know. So remember Karen's close friend and neighbor, Natalie?
Yes.
They were very close, and I kind of downplayed that earlier because it's my understanding that they're no longer friends.
Okay.
And based on everything I'm about to get into, it's hard for me to imagine that the friendship was ever genuine, at least on Karen's part. So when Shannon initially disappeared, like I mentioned, Natalie was making it a point to step up and provide strength and stability for Karen, to lean on, just trying to be there for her in all of the worry and confusion following Shannon being declared missing. Immediately following the report of Shannon not arriving home from school, when the police spoke with Karen and Craig, they gave them very strict orders to not give any interviews to the media. And mere hours later, a news crew arrived in the neighborhood, and there Karen was giving an interview. Natalie had been there when Karen was instructed to not talk to the media, and when she saw Karen violating this order, she ran over to Karen and begged to know why she would jeopardize the case in this way. Obviously, Karen needed to talk to the media.
She was already trying to make her the next Madeleine McCann.
Right. She had to talk to the media in order for there to be any sort of reward money up for grabs that she could then orchestrate grabbing.
Right. How fucking sick to put your daughter in that situation because you think that you can capitalize on the tragedy that occurred to another young girl.
Mm-hmm. It's going to get even more twisted than that. But it was during this conversation between Natalie and Karen that Natalie first noticed that Karen appeared to be behaving strangely for the situation. She was coming across as guarded, and Natalie even indicated that it seemed to her that what Karen was thinking and what she was saying were not aligning. She could tell that she was not telling her the whole truth. Mm-hmm. She said she could tell from a look in Karen's eyes that there was something that she knew that she just wasn't saying, and she tried to pry it out of Karen, but that never worked. Natalie continued to stop in and make sure Karen and the rest of the children were doing all right. But she was always confused by Karen's behavior, even from the beginning of the disappearance. She would come over and Karen would be tidying up and doing dishes, talking about Shannon being gone the same as she would if Shannon spent the night at a friend's house, with no real concern. Another instance of caring. Did I say caring?
Yeah.
Okay. Another instance of Karen acting in a way that Natalie found confusing was prior to a news crew arriving to do another interview, and I'm going to go so far here as to speculate that this was the March 1st interview where Karen talked about how all she wanted for Mother's Day was for Shannon to come home. But that's 100% conjecture on my part, not even relevant, but I just think that it makes sense. The part that Natalie side-eyed, though, was when Karen made a bit of a show before they got there of going upstairs and coming back down with a stuffed little teddy bear to hold while making emotional pleas to the cameras. Natalie asked if the teddy bear was Shannon's, which would make sense.
Right.
And Karen said that she didn't have the slightest idea who the stuffed animal belonged to.
Wow. So this woman doesn't even know which of her children this teddy bear belongs to.
I mean, to be fair, she's got a lot of kids.
Not that live with her.
But she still probably sees the other three.
Does she? We don't know. Doesn't sound like she wants to even see her own fucking kids that live with her.
That's true, but if Shannon's brother lives with the dad and Shannon lives with the mom, it doesn't seem like they didn't see one another.
I don't know. It seems...
I think I know what it is. You are so disgusted with Karen that you're done with her.
Yeah, I don't think she gets to have any redeeming qualities.
No.
This is why sometimes when you build these narratives and there are things that are not up front, it makes it harder to follow in terms of like, okay, well now, I shouldn't even say harder to follow, but like...
It's almost like I pull the rug out from underneath you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emotionally. You're invested with Karen and then all of a sudden now she's...
Right. And so I don't care to give her the benefit of the doubt. She sounds like she was probably a terrible mother. And this is just another layer to that. I don't mean to besmirch her character, but she already did that for herself.
Yeah. So what I would say is the most damning behavior, particularly in the court of public opinion, and especially more so for Natalie and Julie, the ladies with whom Karen was the closest, was the lack of reaction Karen had after the discovery of Shannon.
Someone else got to collect that reward money.
Karen has been likened to a Jekyll and Hyde figure because of the sad expression she wore whenever the media or police were around, and otherwise seeming disinterest in the missing child's case of her own daughter. She was unable to even feign relief or any sort of reaction, probably because she never thought her daughter was in danger, but now her ruse to split the reward money was.
This strikes me as someone who has some kind of disorder that makes it even difficult for them to understand appropriate human reactions and emotions, because most people can feign a level of empathy or fear or concern.
Well, she was faking being sad when the police and media were around, but because they weren't around after Shannon was discovered, and probably because the jig was up at that point, in all honesty, she didn't have any reaction.
Yeah.
She didn't even have a reaction about the money. Like, I don't know, it's confusing. So around the time of Shannon's disappearance, Craig and Karen's relationship had become a bit rocky. And throughout the duration of Shannon's being missing, Natalie began to hear some whispers that Karen was actually planning on leaving Craig for his uncle, Michael.
Oh my God. The man who kidnapped her daughter?
The man who helped her kidnap her own daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, no wonder the fucking family tree looks like the London Underground.
So nowhere did it really spell this out. But after Shannon was found in Michael's home, the speculation, or maybe one of the several stories Karen told in the aftermath, was that Karen was planning on leaving Craig for Michael, and that's why Shannon was at his house being kept there until she was able to get Craig to move out.
Okay, sure. Got it. All of that makes so much sense. Do her parents hate her? Do Karen's parents hate her? I would hate her.
So I do have information about some of their thoughts that they have on other aspects of this big picture case, but nothing where they speak directly about Karen.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think it's just probably devastating. And yeah, I'm going to talk about them a little bit later, but it's not going to be very much that I'm going to say. It won't be very satisfying.
Okay.
So you have that to look forward to. It seems that along the way, in the unfurling of this messy situation, that they created, Karen and Craig split up. And while Michael denied participation in a kidnapping scheme, Karen also denied having anything to do with it and went as far as to point the finger at Craig and Michael.
I mean, that is the smart thing to do.
Except for that, the reason that before she was ever arrested, she owned up to her role when she was confronted by Julie Bushy and one of the officers who was serving as a liaison for her throughout the investigation and subsequent discovery of Shannon.
Okay, got it.
So, also not the brightest bulb. After Shannon was located, social services removed her from Karen's care and placed her in a foster care setting. And the other 3 children who had also been staying with Karen and Craig were taken from their care by social services as well. Michael was charged with kidnapping, attempting to obstruct justice, and false imprisonment. And Karen was charged with perverting the course of justice, child neglect, and later they added the charges of kidnapping and false imprisonment as well.
Okay.
And based on what I was able to find about the court hearing, it seems that they were tried, if not jointly, at the same time. So the trial or trials began in November 2008, where the jury was given evidence that Shannon was drugged while in Michael's care to keep her subdued. Mm-hmm. Although a forensic toxicologist gave testimony that according to tests run on Shannon's hair, she had been given temazepam for up to 20 months prior to her disappearance, or probably more likely her discovery.
Yeah. So they had been drugging this poor girl for months on end. Mm-hmm. What, to not deal with her?
You know, I did look up temazepam and then I forgot what it was.
It sounds like some kind of benzodiazepine.
It is used on a short-term basis to treat insomnia.
Does it have any other names?
Common brands, Restoril.
Yeah, I've heard of Restoril.
It works by slowing down the central nervous system.
That's how all the benzodiazepines work.
So I guess, yeah. There's nothing that explained or even speculated on, that's my job, speculation. But there's nothing that even talked about why potentially it would have been Shannon of the children who was chosen. But it sounds to me like if they're giving her drugs that are going to likely subdue her and keep her asleep, that she was maybe just a lively child.
She could have also been the scapegoat. She could have been the child that they put all of their frustration on.
She could have also had some sort of condition that they did not get treated or even diagnosed that caused her to behave in a way that they didn't like. Right. I mean,
especially at 9.
Yeah. So yeah, for at least 19 months before she disappeared, she was given temazepam.
Poor girl.
Michael told the court that Karen did not really give him the option of participation in this plot to get reward money for Shannon's disappearance, but she actually threatened him with violence after telling him that he was going to be keeping Shannon for a few days so they could collect money from a newspaper.
Yeah, that's a weak excuse. That's pretty flimsy.
As I mentioned before, Karen defended herself by pointing the finger at everyone but herself. She said Craig told her she needed to take the fall for the situation. She said it was all an idea born of Michael, but regardless of that, the jury took 6 whole hours to unanimously find both Karen and Michael guilty of perverting the course of justice, kidnapping, and false imprisonment.
And what was Craig charged with?
I do get to that.
Okay.
Nothing. But
right.
So Karen and Michael were each sentenced to 8 years on January 23rd, 2009, with Michael serving less time ultimately than Karen, who was released in April of 2012.
So how long did they serve?
I guess if you count the time after his arrest in March, her arrest in April, she was there for just right at 4 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
These other countries hate to punish criminals. They fucking hate it. They hate it. To be fair, in the United States, we don't punish white-collar criminals or the ultra-rich, but boy howdy, we can punish some people who abuse and harm children. 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years. That's it? Mm-hmm. Michael had even less? And Craig had none?
Well, a few days before Karen was finally arrested, because I don't think the police were able to find enough evidence in the staged kidnapping of Shannon to press charges against Craig, they did end up arresting him after discovering that he was in possession of child pornography levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, which I don't know exactly what the levels mean, but I have some guesses, and I just want to assume that Craig is a piece of shit without thinking too much about the contents of a level 4 child pornography image.
So he was definitely sexually assaulting Shannon.
Nothing said that.
I mean, nothing can be definite, but I feel like most people would infer or draw their own conclusion that there was that was all somehow related. Allegedly, maybe, possibly.
I don't know what qualifies as child pornography either, though, because if he was 18 and he had been dating a 16-year-old before that and had pictures from a sexual relationship that they entered into, quote, consensually, if that's a thing. I don't know. I don't know if they were just looking to get him on anything that they could.
Right.
Because they couldn't get him for participation in this. Karen did admit to the liaison officer, even though she tried to retract that statement later on. And pretty hard for Michael to deny participation because she was found under his bed, but he did still try. So,
wow.
Craig's mother and sister were also both arrested.
Oh.
But subsequently released. They were suspected of being involved in the situation, but that was the only information I found about that. They were released.
Okay.
Not found to have participated. So remember the Search for Shannon campaign that was being run in the community? During this era of the case, Madeleine's fund, which was the equivalent of Search for Shannon, and is exactly what it sounds like, a fund being collected to assist in the investigation of Madeleine McCann's disappearance, was approached by Search for Shannon to see if they could contribute any of their missing girls fund to this missing girls fund. And just fucking yikes.
Did they?
It didn't say. It just said that they were approached by the Search for Shannon people. I wonder if Karen planted that seed or was part of that.
And she might not have been at all. That might have just been the Search for Shannon making an effort to find a way to increase the reward.
The reward wasn't from them. The reward was from the newspaper.
Oh, I don't know.
The Search for Shannon campaign was spreading awareness about her being missing. And I think that Madeleine McCann was likely what, in part, gave Karen this idea.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why I think that it was suspicious that of all the potential places you could go, I mean, you could go talk to nonprofit organizations, you could go talk to for-profit organizations, but to try to take money from a campaign that's trying to do the exact same thing that what your campaign is trying to do. You're both trying to find children, so it just seems like an odd choice to try to get money from Madeleine's fund.
Right.
While the only two people who were ever charged in this case were Karen and Michael, people such as Natalie and detectives who worked the case are unable to fully accept that the two of them worked alone. I think we can safely assume that Craig was part of the ploy. You know, unless he was being cuckolded by his uncle. Apparently, there were witnesses who saw a couple.
Stupid.
Kunkled. No.
That's another thing that frustrates me about, and I know we just talked about it, about international cases, because I feel like people are never, maybe they're punished to the full extent of the law, but their law doesn't go to a wide enough extent, because this little girl lost 20 months of her life in terms of she was drugged. Her central nervous system was slowed down over an extended period of time. And that kind of benzodiazepine use is dangerous for anybody. And to then have the trauma of being abducted and hid inside of a bed between...
Well, and I don't know if that was, if she was kept there the whole time or if that was like the hiding spot that...
Just for that moment. Either way, I don't feel like it's just for Shannon for these people to not be held liable to a greater extent for her suffering.
Yeah.
And what, did Craig get to still be with their daughter? The kid that they shared?
It said that all of the children who lived with them were...
But is it like American foster care, where a parent can prove that they're worthy and they get the kid back, and the bar is at the fucking ground?
It did not say anything about him getting the child back. There was talk of witnesses who saw a couple go to Michael's house periodically during the time of Shannon's disappearance. Who knows if that's... You know how after something is revealed, people are trying to insert themselves by saying, oh, we saw them, they went there, they were all in on this. So I don't know. And I don't even know what the implication there is other than that Craig knew about the situation. On April 16th, 2024, Michael Donovan died after collapsing at a mental health hospital, which opens up a can of worms for questions that I have.
Did he die by suicide?
No, he collapsed. I think he was having a cardiac moment.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
And this case kind of took on a life of its own, with there being at least 5 documentaries that told the story, several programs that covered it, and a TV dramatization of it called The Moor Side. But Shannon's grandparents were less than pleased with the entire premise of the show and chastised those taking their family's trauma and turning it into entertainment for others, when it obviously held a lot of pain for the family, causing major fractures, and for the children to all be in the custody of family services. I think that was all just a lot for Karen's parents.
Of course, it's got to be a lot for anyone involved.
Yeah. Karen and her children were, according to a few sources, including Shannon's aunt, politicized by the media. It was implied that for Karen, her children were just, in essence, meal tickets for her to get money using government funding. And obviously, family dynamics are not ever that simple. And I think I've mentioned this before, but often people are accused of operating with a level of sophistication that I think serves more to vilify and other them than to put anything into perspective within the frame of a bigger picture. I think I did already talk about this in this episode, but while Karen did seem to be using Shannon to get money with ease, I wonder if the reason was due to Craig's aggression towards her, maybe. I don't know if he was violent with any of the other children, since everything was contextualized around Shannon. I personally kind of do buy into a little bit the relationship between Karen and Michael, that there was something going on there more than just, you're my boyfriend's uncle. I just think that because Karen ended up, after Shannon was found, she told 5 different stories.
Yeah.
I think that she was breadcrumbing truths in each of the stories, you know? And so that's why I think that there was maybe some truth to some of those parts. But
I hate to be so reductive, but when I consider the components of the case that you have shared, it's hard to not assume the worst.
Well, and I immediately say right here that while it could have been a plausible theory that this notion may not have been fully born of greed, but that there were twofold benefits at stake, the immediate contradictions I can think of for that are that Karen, regardless of how much she knew or trusted him, put her child in the sole care and custody of Michael Donovan, a 39-year-old man of no blood relation to Shannon, and wished her the best of luck. If that. And according to the forensic toxicologist, someone had been drugging Shannon for over the course of close to 2 years. And it's hard to imagine that Karen would not be aware of that at the very least, if not the perpetuator of the drugging. Her use of the stuffed animal as a prop to drive home the pathos of her plea to the viewers, preferably those with generous hearts and hopefully deep pockets, without even knowing whose teddy it was.
The pathos of her plea?
Yes.
Are you teaching a lesson on Aristotelian appeals?
Shut the fuck up.
I think there's no excuse. Like, there's nothing. You live in the fucking UK. After 2 kids, I think you can figure out the system. If you don't want to have more kids, you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in Texas. You're not forced into childbirth. And so at some point, it really does make you reckon with the idea that maybe she did see these children as meal tickets. Why did she keep having them? There would have been access to prophylactics. There would have been access to birth control. And then once conceiving, she had options and options and options. But she continued to have them anyway.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to defend or justify or explain or maybe understand, because that is kind of what I like to do, is understand what the fuck. But what I hate is when the media takes a story and they turn the people involved in the story into 2-dimensional characters. And so I guess that's what I'm more so trying to work against. I don't think that she's a good mom. I don't think that she's a good person. I don't know if that's even, I don't know her story, because while her parents haven't said anything that I could find that was negative. They also kicked her out at 15 or 16.
I mean, the truth is, sometimes characters are flat. Sometimes people are two-dimensional. I think you're right to not reduce people to caricatures of what humanity is.
Just to sensationalize the situation.
This is an instance where there's really a fine line because this woman is the product of society. She's the product of her raising. Which is true for everybody, and her circumstances. But ultimately, her daughter shouldn't have had to have suffered for any of that.
No, absolutely
And I know you're not
not.
saying that. I'm just, clarifying to the listener. There's nothing about this that condones any of the actions. It's more of just an exploration of maybe the meaning behind them.
Yeah. There is literally nothing that I read that said this anywhere at all whatsoever. So I do want to be very clear that this is 100% me just making shit up, but I would not be surprised.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if this family had a history of substance use disorder.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was kicked out at 15 or 16 because she was repeatedly found using substances, and sometimes that's
Where
the
were they
hard
getting
level.
the Restoril?
Well, they were probably going to the doctor and saying that
I know,
they
but
were,
that's what I'm saying. Like, medications are so controlled in the UK.
I mean, it did say that it's specifically supposed to be a short term,
Yeah. So
but
how
it was
were
being
they?
used long term.
These are people who knew how to game the system, at least to an extent.
Yeah. I don't know what the record keeping was like in 2007, 2008. I don't know if they're going this clinic to that clinic.
like now.
Well, it's more digitized, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they were able to go from this clinic to that clinic, if they were both going and saying, oh, I can't sleep. I don't know. You're right. They figured out a way to game the system. They probably were doing other drugs. I'm always thinking street drugs, but I don't know. Did I mention that when Karen was released from prison that she was given a new identity?
What? By who?
The government.
For
Her protection, I guess.
from.
Her bad behavior.
So what? Do we know her new identity? Was she found out?
I don't know.
That's disgusting.
I think that it said that she lives in
New identities are supposed to protect victims.
South England. Shannon was also given a new identity and moved away from the area that she grew up in. She'd be about 25 now, and I hope that she is out there living a really stable life.
Me too.
Okay, I have a confession.
Are you Shannon?
Oh my God. I am not 25.
I know.
So I asked AI to help me make my script engaging and a little bit lighthearted, like that it was true crime in nature, but that there was a lighthearted feel to it. It cut 83% of my script. But I'm going to tell you what this AI told me to say for today's episode.
Oh, God.
I took everything that I just read to you and I put it in and I asked it to help me make it engaging and lighthearted. And here we go. Welcome, true crime aficionados.
Oh, God.
Grab your popcorn and settle in, because today we're diving into a tale that's as tangled as a ball of yarn in a kitten's paws.
What the fuck?
Our story begins on September 9th, 1998, when Karen Matthews welcomed her fifth child, Shannon. Now, let's just say Karen's family tree looked more like a sprawling vine than a neat little shrub. 7 children with 5 different men. Talk about a family reunion that could require a map.
What tool did you use?
ChatGPT.
Oh, my God.
Karen had been flying solo since about the age of 15, and she forged a close bond with her neighbor, Natalie, who also had a full house with 6 kids. It's like a real-life episode of Super Nanny, but with a lot more drama.
Oh, my God.
Now, here's a fun quiz for you. Shannon Matthews' family tree was said to resemble what? A map of the London Underground. That's right, complicated and slightly confusing. I mean, if I had £1 for every time I tried to follow that family tree, I'd be rich enough to hire a genealogist.
What prompt did you give ChatGPT?
I told you. I said, edit this podcast script for a true crime podcast to make it engaging for a listener, but to still be a little bit lighthearted. That's the prompt. Fast forward to early 2008 when Karen and her partner Craig, who is 10 years younger, because who doesn't love a little youthful energy, were living in Dewsbury Moor, West Yorkshire. It was a chilly February day when Shannon set off for her swimming lesson, only to go missing on her walk home from school. Cue the dramatic music. When 6:45 rolled around and Shannon was still MIA, Karen made the call that would send shockwaves through the community. Over 200 police officers joined the search, fueled partly by the recent disappearance of Madeleine McCann. It was all hands on deck in a frantic effort to find Shannon, with detectives knocking on doors and asking questions like it was a game of who's who. By March 1st, just a day before Mother's Day, Karen made a heartfelt plea for her daughter's safe return. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the police were working tirelessly with more officers involved than at a family reunion gone wrong. Which I don't even know what that means. But alas, despite the extensive search, the media seemed to favor Madeleine's case over Shannon's, leading to some serious eyebrow raising about socioeconomic bias. It's like comparing apples to oranges, but in this case, the apples were getting all the press. Now, as the days passed, whispers began to surface about Craig's past behavior toward Shannon. Karen and Leon, Shannon's other parent, defended him, but it left everyone with a lot of questions. Things were getting murky, and the plot thickened faster than a bowl of oatmeal left on the stove. On March 17th, 24 days after her disappearance, Shannon was found hiding under a bed in an apartment rented by Michael Donovan, who, surprise, surprise, turned out to be Craig's uncle. Talk about keeping it in the family.
Oh my God.
Shannon was found drugged but safe, and as authorities peeled back the layers of this bizarre tale, it was revealed that Karen, Craig, and Michael had cooked up a scheme to nab some reward money. I mean, get a job, folks! As the investigation unfolded, the once supportive neighbor Natalie began to see Karen in a new light. Was she really the caring mom she portrayed? Or was she just an actress in a tragic drama? From odd behavior to suspicious interviews, Natalie couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Fast forward to the courtroom drama, where the true nature of the plot unraveled. Karen and Michael were found guilty of kidnapping and false imprisonment, each sentenced to 8 years. But let's be honest, in this wild tale, they'll probably write a bestseller about it someday. So while Karen tried to play the blame game, pointing fingers like a contestant on a reality show, the truth was that her actions had real consequences. As for Shannon, she was given a new identity and moved away from the turmoil. And here's hoping she's out there living her best life, possibly with a solid therapist on speed dial.
Oh my God.
And that, dear listeners, is the story of the search for Shannon, a tangled web of family drama, questionable choices, and a search that changed everything. Keep your doors locked and your family trees tidy.
Oh God. That was awful.
I just wanted it to, help. It didn't.
It did not help you. It did not help you at all. Thank you for reminding me that not all mothers are good mothers. And I think you and I as people do look for opportunities to give people the benefit of the doubt. And it is our natural inclination to say that people are varied and they come to us with their life experiences and their own motivations, their own experiences, their own perspective and worldview. And we try to use that as people who have studied psychology to a degree and mental health professionals to a degree. And it's just a reminder that sometimes the why of the behavior really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's an inexcusability to the exploitation of children. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, it wasn't just Shannon who was mistreated, but it bastardizes the memory and the unfortunate legacy of Madeleine McCann and her family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it wasn't just Shannon who was displaced, possibly for the better in all of the cases, but all of her siblings were disrupted by this. Her entire family was disrupted by this. And when I'm remembering that Karen's parents put Karen out when she was young, but I don't know the situation, but if Karen is exhibiting this type of behavior and it is a reflection of how she behaved while she was a child herself, they probably didn't have a better option.
Yeah. And the unfortunate truth is it creates this unfavorable and untrue representation of people with many children. her neighbor Natalie could be the best mother in the world and cares for all of her children and could never dream up such a scheme to try and create more financial resources for herself.
But nobody's talking about Natalie. They're
Right.
only talking about Karen.
That begins to create this cultural understanding of people with many children, especially people with many children from different partners. It perpetuates the negative stereotype.
Or people with many children who are lower income.
Yeah.
People who already have things working against them.
Enough societal obstacles.
Yes. And then now you're creating more obstacles that are unnecessary. And then the next child who might have the misfortune of not being from an affluent family who goes missing, you've almost created almost like the boy who cried wolf situation. People are going to be more hesitant to help because, well, you're just doing this to get money, because that's what happened in this case.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought this case to me because I've never heard of it before. Or maybe Madeleine McCann. Maybe I've heard her name. But it kind of fits perfectly with your canon of stories that are formatted to seem one way and ultimately unfurl a different way.
I just didn't want to do another murder. Not that probable lifelong trauma for a child and woman is ideal.
Give the people what they want. They show up for murder.
But it's dark. Like, sometimes
know.
it's a lot for us, and I imagine for listeners that sometimes it's just dark.
Has every case been a murder since Junko Furuta?
Yes.
That's a lot of dark.
I think since before Junko. The last time we didn't do murder was your attempted murder of Al Benitez.
So it's been a while.
That was episode 16, and this is episode 25.
Wow. We've been hitting the murder hard, huh?
A little bit. So you know what? Nobody died.
Well, thank
Except
God.
for Michael Donovan, who collapsed at a mental health facility.
There you go.
And you said it couldn't have happened to a better man.
That's also true.
And I also know the story that I'm telling you in 2 weeks.
I don't know the story I'm telling you in a week.
Boy, howdy.
I'm going to try to go to Canada.
Oh, for your story.
Something Saskatchewan based.
Oh, yeah. Let's go to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, leave a review, and turn on your auto downloads.
Recommend us to a friend, and make sure that you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram. Word of mouth is our best friend.
And then like us on Facebook at Until the End of Crime and join our discussion group.
If you need to contact us, our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram if you have any questions or episode suggestions.
Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.